Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Victoria Evans. I'm a science-based intuitive eating specialist, helping you stop food fear, food guilt, self-sabotage, and binge eating so you can eat effortlessly and feel amazing. Now in today's video, we're going to be talking all about how to not gain holiday weight. But before you do that, I have a super quick favor. I'd love to ask you to please hit the subscribe button. It really helps me out. I love the support, as well as comment below what video you'd like to see next. All right. Let's dig into it. So before I go into all of my tips, I just wanted to preface that weight changes and winter weight gain is normal. It's seasonal. You might notice that you're a little bit hungrier when it's cold out and a little bit less hungry when it's warm out. And that's not just because you're seeking comfort in food. There's actually a scientific reason behind this. So Dr. Andrew Higginson from the University of Exeter explains that this is actually a survival strategy. So our ancestors needed to store fat in order to survive through the winter months when food was not so available, when it was more scarce. So this is a deep-rooted evolutionary thing that is very normal to happen. Now the next thing I want to say before I dig into some more tips is that we really need to look at what does those few extra pounds gained during the holiday mean? Right? Is gaining those few pounds means I got to have a couple slices of the Christmas cake. I thoroughly enjoyed the Christmas dinner. I got to have Christmas cookies. I enjoyed my holiday advent calendar, my Christmas advent calendar, which I love having that chocolate every morning with my coffee. Right? Are those Christmas pounds or those holiday pounds gained? Do they actually represent living? Right? We tend to look at it as, oh, I've failed. I gained some holiday weight. But I want you to reframe that. Right? Are those holiday pounds gained mean that we are living, not just failing? Something to consider. Now, obviously, if we are eating to the point of discomfort, right, feeling super unwell, then that is different. I'm talking about more giving you a sense of perspective from the guilt incurred from eating more kind of holiday foods and eating more than we maybe wanted to, those few extra pounds gained versus, binging on everything, being out of control because it's your coping mechanism and, again, feeling out of control, feeling like it's the only way you know how to deal with all the problems going on, then that is really something to address a bit deeper, right? And I have so many tools on binge eating that address this specifically, as well as a new community coming super soon, teaching you how to have that healthy and balanced relationship with food so you're no longer feeling out of control around food. Now, last thing before the tips, I also want to remind you that there's nothing wrong with weight gain, right? Our weight does not define us. We are so much more than a body, and our body is going to basically find its natural set point, the point that it's a natural, happy, healthy point, and I'll do more videos on this topic in the future. But basically, we don't need to be controlling and forcing and trying to make our body a certain way. We need to be focusing on showing up and, listening to our body and addressing whatever those unmet needs are that are causing our eating behaviors to feel chaotic and out of control. This leads me to the tips on how to best support yourself from a self-care standpoint, which the byproduct can be weight change, but that should never be the main focus. That should never be the objective. So the byproduct of healthy habits, taking care of yourself, showing up for yourself, having those coping mechanisms and strategies, all of those things, right? The byproduct of that might be weight change, but that should not be the focus. So this brings us to tip number 1, and that is to get curious about your eating habits. If you're eating more than you'd wanted to, I need you to understand what a behavior is, what a habit is, and that is trigger, routine, reward. So we can't get mad at ourselves for the reward of eating more food than we wanted to if we don't understand what is that underlying trigger, if we don't address what that trigger is. So some different tools and different questions to help you get curious and discover what that trigger was are things like, have I eaten enough today? Have I been stressed or overwhelmed? Have I been sad or lonely? Was I just excited to try the holiday foods and I normally make it off limits? Right? Getting curious, because shaming yourself is not going to change a behavior, but getting curious about the trigger will. And bonus points if you can write it down and see if there's a bit of a pattern going on. Are you always noticing after having a certain meeting or after you only have this much for breakfast that it turns into a binge later that day? Get curious, get compassionate, ask yourself those questions and try to discover what is that underlying trigger. And tip number 2 is to have some mini movement goals. Now, I want you to come at it from the perspective of self-care, mental health, showing up for yourself on your body, not as a punishment for what you ate or as permission to eat. We need to, change our perspective, change how we approach movement in order to make it sustainable. So one of the ways that we can do that is by creating micro movement goals. Goals that basically feel super doable instead of like a huge movement goal that we, do once or twice and then don't do again for like 6 months. So maybe that is something like going for a 10-minute walk, going to the gym twice for 20 minutes, right? Again, this is not as punishment. This is not as permission to eat. What this is showing up for yourself, for your mental health, right? This is a way to take care of yourself. Moving your body, exercising is also a great way to increase your longevity, since muscle mass as well as lung capacity is a predictor of longevity. So staying healthy, right? I want you to refocus your perspective of like, what is movement? What is its purpose in my life? Don't make it about weight loss. Make it about taking care of yourself because you love yourself. And I promise it'll be a lot easier to show up and be consistent with it. So set some micro movement goals, not those big giant goals that you don't achieve and feel worse about yourself, but let's make it sustainable. So small micro movement goals that you can consistently show up for yourself and gain more confidence because you've shown up for yourself and done those things. Right. This brings us to tip number 3. And I've said this before and I will say it again, and that is that mental restriction creates mental rebellion and allowance creates space for choice. So you will find yourself rebelling, pushing back on restriction as a natural evolutionary response. So how can you start giving yourself more permission? How can you start giving yourself more allowance with food, right? Because we are only eating a chaotic way. We are only finding ourselves eating all the holiday treats because you've made that food off limits. Versus leaning into permission, leaning into abundance, leaning into allowance. Our brain loves that. It hates scarcity. It hates when things are off limits. Now, everything when it comes to the self-talk around food, the mental restriction, all of that is coming in our community. So I invite you to click the link below to join the totally free waitlist. You can sign up and I'm giving all this below, step by step, all the information, and it'll be there for you, easy peasy to follow along. So again, for all that information, check out the show notes below of this, the description below, and you can sign up for that. So be super conscientious of your self-talk, right? Don't be restricting those foods that you find yourself out of control around. Work on and focus on giving yourself permission to have those foods, like literally saying, I give myself permission to eat this Christmas cookie. Do I feel like eating this Christmas cookie, right? Remove the restriction and give yourself that permission. And in that space, you allow yourself to create the opportunity for choice. So tip number 4 is not compensating if you ate more than you'd wanted to if your weight has gone up. Personally, I say throw the scale away, right? It's not a measure of your worth. It's not a measure of how well you're doing. For example, if you are someone who menstruates, right, your weight is going to be higher during certain points of your cycle. Or if you've had saltier food the day before, or if you were stressed, like all these things have massive influence on your weight. And none of that is how well you are showing up and doing those habits that are a form of self-care. Right? The scale is basically not going to tell you what you need to know. And in fact, it's going to set you on this total roller coaster ride where every time you step on it and your weight goes up or down or stays the same or whatever, it's going to influence the sustainability and the consistency of those habits of nourishing your body, of going to the gym and moving because it feels good for you, right? We want to, again, going back to that first point, change the focus, change the perspective. We are not doing this because we hate ourselves. We're doing this because we love ourselves. We are showing up and taking care of ourselves because we want to, not because we have to, right? And again, all this I'm sharing in the totally free community step by step, so link below. But just something I want you to be reminded of is that your weight is not an indicator. So I want you to throw that scale away because that scale does not tell you what you need to know. It is not going to be supportive. It's not going to be useful. And right, none of this is listening to your body's hunger and fullness cues. None of this is creating that sustainable relationship with exercise because you're making all of that conditional and dependent on the number on the scale, which will inevitably change because we are humans and our weight changes throughout the year, throughout the week, throughout all the time, right? And so if we are making our habits dependent on what that number is, we're going to end up with massive inconsistencies. So no, don't try to compensate if your weight changes. Get rid of that scale and show up for yourself in a more consistent way because you love yourself, not because you hate yourself. All right, tip number 5 is ask yourself the question, how can I better support myself? what do I actually need right now? Right? So regardless if you notice your weight changing or whatever, I want you to be getting into the practice of checking in with what are your needs. So even doing it with me now, right? So deep breath in, exhale, right? Regulating that nervous system. Inhale, exhale, putting your hand on your heart, just asking yourself the question, like, what do I need right now? How can I better support myself? How can I best show up for myself? Right? Simple questions like that, insanely powerful, because you realize we're so go throughout the day. We're never checking in with ourselves. We're never asking ourselves what we truly need. And as a result, our eating habits tend to be quite chaotic. Our exercising habits tend to be quite inconsistent, right? Because we are not meeting those needs. We are self-soothing with food. We are self-sabotage because it's actually self-protection from unmet needs. So check in with yourself, hand on heart. What do you need? How can you best support yourself? Sounds really cheesy, but it's super powerful. All right, those are 5 super quick tips for you. If you like this video, I invite you to please subscribe, like, as well as comment below what you'd like to see next. I also invite you to check the link below to sign up for our totally free community. The waitlist link is there for you below. So with all that said, thank you so much for listening to this video, so much for watching this video. I so appreciate you and your support. And until next week, I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.